I'm with Filmon, and Filmon is from Eritrea originally, but here in Israel. Filmon, how did you originally get to Israel?
I was a victim of kidnapping in Sudan, so I was abducted and taken to Egypt, to the Sinai Peninsula, to be more exact.
Now, you're originally from Eritrea. What was the situation like before you left Eritrea, and why did you leave?
Horrible. That's one way I can explain it. The situation is really, really dire. People have lost the sense of freedom. There is a totalitarian state. It is a totalitarian state, but we have a crazy dictator for a president. There is no freedom of speech, no freedom of worship. Basically no freedom. You just do what you're told or else. And those who defy the government by voicing their concern, they disappear. Literally, they disappear. The government has a net of informers, so even if you want to protest, you cannot trust anyone, because he has the country divided, question each other's loyalty, and he has brainwashed half the country to believe that the president, he himself, is saving them from cruelty of the world.
Of course, you protested.
Yeah, they feel like as if not for him, the country of Eritrea would not exist. But it's totally to the contrary. It's because of him that thousands, hundreds of thousands of Eritreans are fleeing their country. Not only their country, their neighboring country also, because he has a net of spies there too, especially Sudan.
So you escaped and went to Sudan?
Yeah. It took me 3 days, 3 nights to get to Sudan on foot, and once I reached there, I went to the refugee camp for 2 weeks. But thing is, before I could move on from there, I was kidnapped from the refugee camp.
And why do they kidnap? Why are they kidnapping Eritreans?
Well, they are exploiting actually the sense, the Eritrean lifestyle. Generally, Eritrean, there is no such thing as individuality. It's usually a community life. Whatever happens to an individual affects the whole community in general. So when they notice that people without help, or people with no money, would get help from relatives, sometimes from even strangers, they chose to exploit it, and they started kidnapping Eritreans particularly, to the Sinai desert, and then they would make you call your home and demand a huge amount of money, a huge amount of ransom money, amounting up to, sometimes if you're lucky it's 30, sometimes it's 40, nowadays it's even $55,000.
That must be quite scary for your family to hear that you've been kidnapped, and then you have to call them and tell them.
Yeah, even in Sinai, even when I was tortured, while I was tortured, I really felt sorry for my family and friends, because imagine someone that you love and care about calling on the phone, screaming for help, and the one thing you can help him is money, and yet there is none of it. It was actually, they too were being tortured.
In more of a psychological way.
Yes. This Sinai incident has affected Eritreans in so many levels.
In what sort of way did they torture the people who they'd kidnapped?
Their imagination is the limit. They would just come and beat you up with a stick. This is the norm there. And sometimes they would take off your shirt, make you lie down, and then whip you till one of the torturers would get tired, and then would be replaced by another, and this keeps going on. and of course it would pour molten plastic on your hand, on your backs, on your thighs, and whatever parts of your body they would think would be more painful to you. Of course, there's a tying up business. Well, both your feet are shackled, so what they would do is that they would hang you up upside down, dangling from the ceiling, and sometimes upright. In my case, they left me hanging for 3 days, which is what finally damaged my hands.
So basically, you've lost parts of both of your hands, really, because of that, haven't you?
Yeah, because of the hanging. Actually, well, considering the extent of torture that I took there, I shouldn't have lived. I was unable to walk, let alone walk. I was unable to stand. Yeah. The chain that was shackled to my right foot was so tight. Even when I screamed to ask them to release it a little, they refused, and the chain had started to dig into my flesh. I had some sort of blood poisoning effect. I cannot describe it. I kept shaking. I couldn't stand. My vision was poor. At one point, it went to the extent of not being able to differentiate between light and dark.
And how did you manage to get away from all of this?
Well, family, friends, strangers, help. People who just wanted to help, even Sudanese neighbors that we used to live with, they all pitched in and they came up with the ransom money. So
this must have been a huge amount of money for everyone to pay.
Of course, a huge amount. If it hadn't been for those who lived abroad in the States, Canada, Europe, it would have been impossible to come up with the money.
And you've ended up here in Israel. How did that happen?
Well, after I paid the ransom, they just took me and dumped me to another smuggler who was actually responsible of taking people and getting them into Israel. This guy, unlike the other kidnappers, he was kind. He actually advised me to stay with him for 2 weeks, eat and get stronger, because he saw my situation and said, you can never go to Israel, you will never make it. The one thing sure would be was you'll die. Yeah. But I already had a deep infection. I know my situation was really horrible. I wouldn't have cared much if the ransom hadn't been paid, but my family and friends have done the possible to get the money, so just not for my sake, for their sake, I had to make it. Yeah. So I told them I had to go the same night, that very same night. If not, I wasn't. It was simple. I wasn't gonna make it. Yeah. I already had a deep infection, and that guy was kind, actually, really kind. He didn't want to let me go. He said he thought that just me going that way would be just my end. He even got me a doctor or a nurse, some guy who came, but he concurred on my opinion. He said the same thing. Unless I get to a hospital, I won't make it. Yeah. So against his desire, he had to let me go. So what he did was group other refugees who were coming into Israel into different groups. He divided them into different groups, 5 in each groups, and they carried me over Israel. I don't remember much of the journey. I was delirious, hallucinating. I kept passing out, so I was more unconscious than conscious.
So you were taken basically into Israel, and they took you straight to hospital?
Yeah, as soon as we came in contact with the Israeli soldiers, they saw my situation and they sent me to the Soroka hospital in Beersheba. The rest of my group, they went directly to the Sharonim prison. Yeah.
So they basically became refugees?
Not really. I call them refugees because I know they're refugees, but in Israel they don't have that title or that status. They are, well, we all do have this group protection. When I say group protection, I'm putting it into between double quotes. I don't really see how group protection can help anyone, with no health care, educational system, or any integrational system for the refugees when they come here. I really think if they had another option, refugees should not come here. This is the last place they should come to. But individually, of course, I was treated well so far.
What's your status at the moment?
Well, for the status, I'm still have this group protection, but that's it, limbo. And as the Knesset has been calling us, infiltrator. And of course, they passed the anti-infiltration law last June 2012, and that gives the Israeli government to detain any illegal refugee, anyone who came into the country illegally, for an indefinite time, at least 3 years, without any legal aid, without any help. That kind of makes me, frustrated. I mean, imagine this is supposed to be a first world country, and Sudan is not. It's a third world country, but even Sudan granted us refugee status. They gave us cards. Well, of course they cooperated with our government to apprehend some of us, but still, to most of us, they gave us a second home. So I was expecting more here, not less.
So the future basically for you is really uncertain, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very uncertain. Let alone in my, current condition, this disability, even with full health, it would look uncertain. So I'm not sure how it's going to end up next month or next year, or if the law is going to be rejected, or more legislations that hurt the refugee community might be passed the next few months. We don't really know. Yeah.
And what's your prayer finally for Eritrean refugees trying to get across the border and escaping all this persecution? What's your prayer for them?
Well, I would start with advice. You have a better chance to trying to cross the Atlantic than trying to cross this Sinai desert to Israel or Libya and to Italy. As a prayer, I would pray that finally there comes a solution, not here, not in any foreign countries, back home where the problem starts. Maybe there might be an election in a form of coup d'etat or something. Maybe something good might come. That's what I pray for, actually. That would be a solution to all the Eritrean refugee problems, because once that happens, everyone is going to return back home. I know that.
The sad thing is, you went through a lot and you suffered a lot, but it's still going on today, isn't it?
Yeah, and the one thing that makes me wonder is, why is the world powers doing nothing? It's not a big secret. It's, you can say it almost in all the media. CNN has done some documentaries. Al Jazeera has done documentaries. You don't need an intelligence agency to know what's going on in Sinai. What's worse than what the Bedouins are doing in Sinai is the fact that those people with power to stop this choose not to. That's way worse.
Okay, Filmon, well, thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.